Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sneha and today I'm very excited to be sharing my haul from the recent Sydney Grace Christmas in July sales. So it did take a while to get to the UK, but it's finally here. So if you'd like to see what products I picked up and also see swatches of all the shades that I own from Sydney Grace and also swatches of the two new eyeshadow palettes they've released, then please continue watching. Also, I just wanted to mention that I've not seen a lot of Indians or people of Indian origin talk about this brand. I don't know why. I think only Antariksha is the only other person I feel like who talks about Sydney Grace. But these are such good quality eyeshadows and I would highly recommend you guys checking them out. So having said that, let's get on to the haul. So essentially how this works is that I think the sale runs through a week and each day of the week there is a different offer. So I took advantage of 2 days, which was if you buy eyeshadows or I guess products in general worth $55 or above, you get a free eyeshadow palette. So on day one, I believe it was a free Chase Your Dreams palette, and I'll show you the inside of this in a bit. And on another day later that week, they also had the same offer but with a different palette. So I did pick this one up as well in the shade Deep. So this is their Summer Days palette. And then on another day, they had an offer of if you spend 30, you get products worth 20 for free. So essentially gift with purchase depending on how much you spend. So I believe I spent around $30, which was the minimum, and I got eyeshadows worth $20. So I got 4 eyeshadows for free on that day. So essentially, I like to take advantage of the Christmas in July sales because I live in the UK. So not only do I have to pay a lot for shipping, which is around $23, for Sydney Grace, and then I have to also pay customs, and this time the customs was £26, which is almost around $36 if I'm not wrong. So it does get quite hefty, so I can only justify buying only when there is like a big sale or when they can take the shipping charges off if you spend above, I believe, $145 or $150. So that's what I took advantage of. So there's a lot of products to go through. So in total, I ordered 27 of their single eyeshadows. So they come in matte finish, shimmer finish, and also pressed pigments. And then I got the 4 eyeshadows that I mentioned for free. So that brings it up to 31. But off that, I had 1 shade, which was like a repeat from my order. So I've kept that away for a future giveaway because I don't want to repeat. And I already had 10 eyeshadows. So overall, the swatches here are for 40 single eyeshadows. And of course, the 2 palettes that I showed you. So first I'm just going to insert a quick clip right here where I am opening and rearranging the Sydney Grace eyeshadows. So what I did was kept Makeup Forever Artist palette empty. This can hold about 40 round eyeshadows, and if you have the Viseart square pans, it can hold up to 52 or 53 eyeshadows in here. It's a really good and strong and sturdy kind of a palette if you're in the market looking for one. So as you can see here, I'm just trying to group the eyeshadows by color family, if that makes sense. So I'm keeping the neutral separate and then purple separate, blue separate, and so on. And this is the final layout I came up with. So I have all my neutrals right here, slightly warm tones as well in there. Then I move into my burgundy tones, my red tones, purple tones, both cool tones and warm tone purples. And then lastly, blues and greens. And for some reason, I've been recently gravitating back into neutrals for some reasons. That's the reason you see it quite neutral heavy, I would say. So let's get started with the swatches for this. Now, as I'm going through each shade, I will show you close-up swatches and I'll also do a live swatch right here on the video. So I hope that's helpful because then you can see it in reference to my skin tone, I guess. I hope that's helpful. Also, I do have a previous Sydney Grace video with haul and swatches and also creating an eye look with it. So I'm just going to link it right here. So if you'd like to listen more about the formula, hit on the I button right here. And if you're curious about the makeup look I have on, I have used all my Sydney Grace single eyeshadows and I will be having a tutorial for this on my Instagram. So definitely consider following me there if you aren't already. So the first shade I have here is Major. This is what it looks like. It's like a light yellow gold kind of an eyeshadow and it's their pressed pigment formula. There you go. Absolutely stunning. Look at that intense pigmentation, which is why their pressed pigments are some of my favorite formulas to try. So it's a yellow gold, but it's not too yellow gold, if that makes sense. So against my skin tone, you can see this is what the shade looks like. So this on my skin tone can be a great shade all over the eyelid or also on the inner corner. Next we have Bronze to Perfection, which is also a pressed pigment. This has to be one of my favorite shades ever, especially in the neutral realm. This reminds me so much of a MAC eyeshadow. It was called Woodwinked, I believe. I do have it, but this is definitely more intense because this is new and that is like at least 10 or 11 years old. So I'm very happy to find a dupe for that. There you go. Beautiful metallic sheen. So that's like more of a bronzy gold color, but not too bronze. Again, this is something that looks beautiful all over the eyelid. I have created an eye look already with this, which I'll post on my Instagram. But again, this can be all over the eyelid or even as an inner corner highlight. You can also use any of these light shimmery shades for a halo eye, so something in the middle for the halo eye. Next, we have Blushed, which is also a pressed pigment. This is more of a rose gold shade. Okay, right there. Again, these are very buttery and creamy to the touch. You can see the rosiness in that shade compared to the other two colors. Again, a beautiful shade for the lid, inner corner, or the center of a halo eye. Next, we have the shade Rosebud, which is also their pressed pigment. And this is a limited edition shade. I did contact them about it because I couldn't find the shade on their website. So this was a special release for the sale, but I'm not sure if they're going to add this to their eyeshadow collection. So this was one of the gift with purchase shade that I got, and it's quite similar to the previous shade, but I believe this one is slightly less rosy, if that makes sense. There you go. You see that it's slightly lighter version of the previous shade. Now, because these are so pigmented, you need the smallest amounts. I've just smoothed out the eyeshadow, and this is what the first four shades look like. Next, we have Amber, which is also a pressed pigment. Beautiful bronze shade. This is again one of my favorite shades, and it reminds me a lot of a MAC eyeshadow. I believe it was called Romp. Just going to smooth it out so it doesn't look crumbly. There you go. And against my skin tone, this is what it looks like. Great for a bronzy, smoky eye. So you can apply this all over the eyelid, or you can use this to deepen up the outer portion. Say you have a lighter shade like the first four shades that I showed you. This can be nice on the outer corner of the eye. Next, we have Chocolate Bar, which is also a pressed pigment. So this is like a plummy brown color. So you can see the purple plum tones in that shade. Again, lovely. So think of having maybe a rose gold shade or something light on the eyelid, something neutral, and having this on the outer half of the eyelid. So this shade is not as reflective as the first four shades, as you can see here. So it can also look really nice blended into the socket, so as a crease color. Next to are again going back to that heavy metallic beautiful shine. This first shade is again one of my favorites. It's called Tiara. It's a pressed pigment. So it looks silver, and generally I don't wear silvers, but this one has a little bit of warmth to it compared to other silvers that I own, and therefore it's one of my favorites. Let me show you. Again, you need the smallest amount for these eyeshadows. I'm going to probably put it right here. You can see how stunning that color is. And against my skin tone, this is what it looks like. Again, great as inner corner, all over the eyelid for a gray smoky eye. Beautiful. And the last shade in this first set is called Times Square. This is also a pressed pigment. This was again a shade gift with purchase. And it's a shade that was released especially for the sale. So I'm not sure if you can get this at a later point. But beautiful silver, but it has a little bit of plum and gray tones running through it. So it's a deeper shade. There you go. Let me spread that out a bit better against my skin tone. So you can really pair these two shades quite well and use a black or a dark brown to deepen up the outer corner, and you have a beautiful look. Let's move on to the matte neutral warm eyeshadows next. So starting off with pinky plummy kind of tones. This first one is another favorite of mine, very unique matte eyeshadow. This is called Adore Me. And this is their matte formula. Very unique shade. It reminds me quite a bit of the shade, I think Razor Glass or Razor Glass from Colored Rain Cheers to Your Beauty palette. But this is like a lighter cousin of that one. You can see how much pigmentation there is on these shades, and they're very smooth, the mattes as well as the shimmers. So again, lovely shade just all over the eyelid. If you want like a nice matte rosy look, this can be a one shade and done kind of a look, or you can use this in your crease or transition. It'll look beautiful. Next is a deeper version of that shade and with slightly more purple tones. This is called Unpredictable. Again, compared to my skin tone, you can see how the first shade is a lot warmer than the second one, which has a little bit of purple and gray in it because it's quite a muted purple. And this third shade is called Eastern Rice. This looks like a brown, but it does have quite a bit of plummy purple gray tones to it. I feel like it goes quite well with the previous two shades. There you go. And now you can see how much more cool tone that third shade is compared to the first two. Okay, so those are the first three mattes. Next three are yellow and kind of brown with yellow mixed in. So the first shade is called Mango Tea. It's a lovely matte yellow tone. Again, this can be all over the lid, or you can use it as your transition shade. That's what it looks like. Beautiful color. Next is one of my favorite shades. This is called Toffee. I love this because it's a neutral brown. It's not too warm, it's not cool, it's right there in the middle. So it can go with a lot of looks. Just do that. You can see how much more nude that is compared to the vibrant yellow. So it's a nice transition shade for me. And then this one is slightly warmer. It has slightly more peachy tones. This is called Peanut Butter. Again, makes for a beautiful transition shade. You can see how much more peachier, warmer that is compared to the middle shade. So those are the next three mattes. The next three colors are more orangey, red, plummy tones. So these would be your medium to dark kind of eyeshadows. The first one is Harvest, which is like a beautiful orange color. This is one of the shades I have actually in my crease. So if you can see that, it's lightly blended through. So you can use it lightly through your crease, or you can use it as a standout color all over the lid. Multiple ways to use this shade. The next shade is Gulf Coast. It's a slightly muted red color. You can see that it is red, but it's quite muted. It's not as bright as the orange. So it does have a little bit of gray through it as well. Next we have Lords A Leaping, which is like a reddish, plumish brown. You can see the purple tones in it. Next is a dark brown shade. This is called Beyond. I find it quite neutral, and it's quite a deep color as well. This is the shade I've used lightly to deepen up the outer corner of my eye. It almost looks cool toned and more gray based compared to the three warm shades that we have on the hand. It's against my skin tone. You can see although it looks so dark, when I blended it out on my outer V, it's not as dark just because I didn't want it too dark. And depending on what you pair it with, it can look cool toned or warm toned. So that's quite nice. And the next matte we have is a black matte. This is called Midnight. It is a good matte black shade, but I find that the black in one of the other palettes is more pigmented than this one, just marginally. So in case you were thinking of getting the palette or single eyeshadows, almost looks like a very dark gray, if that makes sense. Just pop it on here. You can see the pigmentation. It almost looks like a blue-black. Next up are some of the peachy, orangey, red, and red-violet kind of colors. So there's 5 shades in total. The first one is called Golden Strawberry. This is the shimmer formula. So it has more sheen than a satin regular formula, but it's not as metallic or reflective as the pressed pigments. It still creates a beautiful finish on the eyelid. There you go. Again, beautiful on the lid, or also to blend out into the socket, just because it's more of a muted satin kind of finish instead of being full on reflective. Next is another one of my favorite shades, just because it's so unique. This is called Golden Peach. So generally when you see these kind of shades, they are more muted. So I think MAC had one, which I forget the name, but had like a peach and a gold shift. But that was very muted. This is kind of a stronger color compared to that. And this is something I have on the inner portion of the eyelid. So going 3/4 of the way. And this was applied dry with a flat brush. And if I didn't mention, this is their pressed pigment. So even within pressed pigment, they have some which are like full on metallic like Tiara. Then you also have these shades which are more muted. There you go. But it definitely has more shine than the shimmer formula, which is the first one. Next is again one of my favorite shades. It looks like a regular shimmery red shade, but this one has that hint of orange in it, which looks absolutely stunning. This is called Lost Princess. Again, it's a pressed pigment. This is the shade I have on the outer half of my eyelid, but I've also blended that dark brown through the outside corner, so it's not very obvious, but it's also the shade along my lower lash line. You can see that intensity and that beautiful orange red tones. I can't wait to do a smoky eye with that shade, maybe with black or dark brown on the outside of the eye. Next, we're moving into the red violet shades. This is called Queen of Hearts and is a pressed pigment. This is one of the very popular shades. A lot of people love this and call it their favorite plummy burgundy kind of tone. So let's swatch this one. You can see that it's starting to have a little bit more purple plum to it compared to the previous 3 shades. And then lastly, we have Princess Pepe, which is slightly more purple than the previous shade. Again, a pressed pigment. And if I didn't mention, each of these pans contain 1.8 grams of eyeshadow. Okay, let's swatch it right here. Next up are greens and blues. One of my favorite shades again is this one from Sydney Grace. It's called Take the Time and is a beautiful pressed pigment. Stunning. Against my skin tone, this is what it looks like. Beautiful all over the lid. You can use it on the inner corner if you're doing a deeper green blue kind of a look. Stunning shade. Next is an olive green. This is called Gold Earth and is also a pressed pigment. This one I don't get much use from, just being honest. I personally feel that olive eyeshadows look best on lighter skin tones. It somehow doesn't look as great on me. I don't know, maybe because I have an olive undertone in terms of skin tone. So it just kind of blends in. But that is what it looks like. Next is a beautiful teal kind of a shade. This is called Marine Waters and is a pressed pigment. It has more blue in it than green. If you love blue eyeshadows, this is stunning. Next is their multi-chrome. This is called Chameleon Air and is a pressed pigment. With these, you hardly need to touch the pan, otherwise you're going to get way too much. So I'm just done one little swipe there. There you go. It's a green-blue kind of a shift. It also has a little bit of yellow depending on the lighting you look at it. Next, we have 2 matte shades. One's a green, one's a blue. This first one is one of my favorite green matte eyeshadows ever. It's called Evergreen. Absolutely stunning. Again, very unique to my collection. I don't have any other brand which has done a green like this one. There you go. Next, we have a blue. It's called It's a Boy. So those are all the greens and blues. Next, let's look at some of the pinks, purples, purple blues, and those kind of tones. So the first four are going to be slightly warmer than the other shades that I'm going to show you later. This first one is called Siren, which is a pressed pigment and a very unique shade. Again, I do not have anything like this in my collection. I love that you can still find unique shades, so I appreciate when a brand creates really unique shades. There you go. So it's a purple, but it does have a pink tone to it as well. So it's like a very, very light red violet almost. Next we have Firecatcher, which is also a pressed pigment. This is a deeper and slightly more warmer version of that first shade. Let me just spread that out. It's against my skin tone. This is what they look like. Next up, we have Magic Act, and this is the shade they duplicated in the Free With gift purchase. So I do have a duplicate of this one, which I've added in a future giveaway pile. So this is the shimmer formula. This is definitely a red violet, a lot of red tones through it as well. Just spread that out. Beautiful color, so vibrant. Against my skin tone, this is what it looks like. That can be such a beautiful one shade and done kind of a look all over the eyelid and blended into the crease. Next up, we have a deeper and a slightly more muted with a gray base, kind of a purple. This is called Sweetheart and is a pressed pigment. You can see that these last two shades pair quite nicely. And if you want, you can have the first shade all over the lid or even as an inner corner highlight with the other shades. Okay, next we're moving into violet and blue violets. This first shade is called Deliverer. It's a pressed pigment and again a very unique shade in my collection. Slightly warm tone compared to the other shades, but still a beautiful light violet color. Just swatch it right here. Next is a deeper violet. This is called Awake and is one of their pressed pigments. Okay, there you go. Those two pair so well together. So that's Deliver on the top and Awake, I believe, at the bottom, yeah. Next is another gorgeous purple shade, but it's a slightly more blue tone compared to the other two shades. This is called As If and is a shimmer shade. Hopefully you can see the blue as I swatch compared to the other two shades. I think you can see how much more blue it has compared to the other two. Okay, the next two again are very blue toned. This is called Flannel and is a pressed pigment. One of my favorite shades. Against my skin tone. Next we have Fears, which is also a pressed pigment. This shade definitely has more blue than the previous shades. You can see how much more blue that one has. And then lastly, I have a purple multichrome. This is called Beauregard and is a pressed pigment. There you go. Not a big fan of this particular multichrome. So that's all the swatches for the single eyeshadows. Let's now move on to the two palettes that I got. First one is Summer Days, and what I really love about this brand, even though it's a small indie brand, they released two versions of this palette, one which is slightly more light skin friendly and one that is more deep skin tone friendly. So I picked up the shade Deep. So essentially I believe three shades differ in this palette in between the two light and deep versions, but this is what it looks like. It comes in a sleeve with similar packaging. You get a nice sized mirror in there and you get 9 eyeshadows. So if I bring that in closer, this is what they look like. So in this palette, I get 5 matte shades, which is fantastic. And I get 4 shimmers, of which I feel like these two are the high shine, wet looking kind of shades. This one is slightly in between. It's not as shimmery as these two, but it's not like a satin finish, whereas this one is more like the shimmer finish in their regular eyeshadows. So let's get into the swatches. I will be going by row. So here, the second row, and then the third. So the first shade is called Basque, and this is in both the palettes, but it's just more yellow gold in this one compared to the light version. Looks beautiful, not just on the eyelid, but also as an inner corner highlight. Next we have Sandcastle, and I just want to take a moment to talk about the 3 transition mattes right here. I love what they've done with this palette. So you do have one which is like a neutral transition shade, which is Sandcastle. You have one which is slightly more warmer, which is called Break of Day. And you have one which is slightly more cool toned and more gray based, which is called Beach Days. So I love that you have 3 different options for transition shades. So you can take the look more neutral, warm, or even cool tone, depending on what shades you pair it with. So I love this palette for that reason. Back to the swatches. So Sandcastle, which is the second matte. Okay. Next we have Break of Day, which is the warmer transition shade. Pop it next to it and see how much more orange that one has. Next row, we're starting with the really dark brown shade from the palette, which almost looks black, which is called Daystar. So I'm going to pop it right here. Then we have the cool toned transition shade. So probably put right here. You can see that. It has a little bit of purple running through it. Then we have a nice neutral dark brown. Put right here. Then we have a deep plummy burgundy tone. Pop right here. And then the last 2 are the high shine shades. The first one is called S'mores. I'm going to pop it right here. You can see how reflective that shade is. Beautiful. And then the last shade from this palette is called Camping, which is like a copper tone. There you go. That's what the deep palette looks like against my skin tone. So this is a beautiful neutral palette that I think I will get a lot of use from. Especially love that there is the option of the 3 transition shades. You have something good, which is like a medium to deepening kind of a shade, and a really dark brown. So that's beautiful, not just for lining your top lash line like I've done today with a different shade from the singles, I think beyond. Or you can also use it to deepen up the outer V, so you can use it instead of a black, which I really love. And you also get 4 shimmers, so you can go for something really subtle and smoky, but not very reflective like this one. You can go for a gold look, or you can go for 2 of these, which are like high shine copper versus maybe like a champagne shade. That's more like it. So again, highly recommend picking this up. I know they're currently sold out, but it is worth it. It's beautiful. Also, I love that this palette, although it retails for $33 and it feels like, oh my god, that's a lot of money for 9 eyeshadows, you are getting the same amount of product in here as one of our single eyeshadows, so 1.8 grams for each of these pans. And then considering that the mattes are for $5 and the shimmers are for $6, and then this one I've included as $5, this palette is worth $48. So you're getting $48 worth of eyeshadow for $33. And if you took advantage of the Christmas and July sales, you could have got this for free. So definitely keep an eye out maybe for their next sale. They do some amazing deals, I believe, around October, Black Friday, that kind of time. So keep your eyes peeled for that. This is definitely a palette that I would highly recommend. So the 3 shades that are different in the 2 versions are Basque, Sandcastle, second shade right here. They have a much lighter version in the light palette. And then Daystar instead is more like a light medium gray kind of a color. So I'm definitely glad I got this because I don't tend to use those kind of colors. Considering the price and the total grams in here, each gram costs just $2.03, which is a steal, especially for the quality of Sydney Grace eyeshadows. So highly recommend these palettes. And then last but not the least, we have Chase Your Dreams palette, which is this beautiful purple packaging. Again, has that sleeve on the outside. On the back, you do have a shelf life of 18 months. Sydney Grace logo and the ingredients written right here on the top. Again, similar packaging. You do get a nice sized mirror and then 9 eyeshadows. So this palette, based on the description, is more like an additional palette, so more like a pop of color that you can add to your existing collection. This comes only in one shade, so there's no light or deep version. And this is what the palette looks like. Again, as I said before, each pan is 1.8 grams and the palette retails for $33. And in this palette, you only get 3 mattes. So that one, the middle shade right here, and this matte black, which is beautiful. And the rest of the shades are a mix of the high shine pressed pigment kind of a finish, and then some which are more muted and more shimmer-like, especially this one. But I really love the shade, your friend, but you'll see the swatches. So let's begin with those. The first shade is called The Dream, which is this yellow gold shade. Here, get that reflectiveness. It almost looks like molten gold. Second shade is Aspire, just like a peachy gold kind of a tone. Looks like that. Next we have a matte shade from the palette. This is an orange called Be Bold. That looks like that. Next up is a burgundy tone. This is the Chase. Looks like this. Then you have the second matte, which is called You Can, which is slightly more muted. It has quite a bit of gray to it. Just watch it right here. You can see that it's more red tone and more muted compared to the other orange shade. Next we have a shimmer finish, I think, which is called Don't Quit, which is like a warm tone purple. There you go. Next we have a vibrant purple called The Drive. A lot of people love this shade. Vibrant purple. Then we have Your Best, which is like a mushroom color, I would say. It has purple and gray and taupe running through it. I love the shade. And then the last shade, which is a matte black. So that is Chase Your Dreams palette. Beautiful pops of color. Again, as I mentioned with the other palette, it is great value for money. So highly recommend this one if you're more into colors compared to neutrals. And that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed watching the swatches, and I hope this was helpful, especially to those of you guys who have probably a similar skin tone as mine. So if you enjoyed it, definitely give it a thumbs up and also consider subscribing to my channel. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!